It is Thursday night. Evening, everybody. Welcome to Grumpy Acres. Glad you guys could be here. I got a special guest tonight. It's Jake Snyder from Dog Creek Farm. Oh, hang on a second. I'm getting feedback. Hang on. I'm still not a professional at this, Jake. I can't make people moderators in StreamYard, so I got to have one open in case I want to turn somebody into a moderator.
Oh, gotcha. No problem.
As I was saying before, I was so rudely interrupted by myself. We've got Jake Snyder from Dog Creek Farms with us tonight. He's got a really cool story. He's doing some really neat stuff. You may have seen him with the interview over with Tag from Life Done Free. He much more in-depth detail about what he's doing on his farm. We're going to talk about that a little bit tonight, Jake. But what I wanted to hear about was your efforts at trying to build community. And we were talking before it all started, everybody, and he's doing some neat stuff, and he's got a very interesting story. Before we go on, I need to acknowledge people that showed up. So Farmall was the first one, and he was in 20 minutes early, Jake. He's so excited to listen to you. He showed up 20 minutes early. And T-Paw's here, and this and that. Matt showed up here too. And there's other people in the other people lurking. It says that there's 5 people watching. More will show up. But that's not why we're doing this, right? I'm doing it because I want to talk to you. Okay, so Jake, tell us a little bit about how you got from where you started to where you are now, because you didn't always do this modern self-sufficiency and homesteading thing, did you?
No, definitely not. So I probably got that bug when I was a kid. I used to run around with my great grandpa, and so I think he planted the seed with me. He passed away when I was young, so all that went away. Nobody else really did anything like that in my family. So we raised some 4-H livestock. They were all pets. I mean, regardless of what animal it was a pet. But looking back at it now, I think, man, if we would have known then what I know now, it would have been totally different. But so really, that's kind of what got me started in it. And even with everything life throws at you, it's just never left me. And it took us a long time. And even when we got to the point where we were ready, it's still, we looked for 4 years probably before we actually found our farm. So even not, talking about everything it took to get to the point where we could actually buy it, even when we were ready, it took 4 years. So we've been through a lot. Honestly, the way it all worked out, when you look at, it's kind of like everything. When you look back at it, it all, makes a little more sense. But we've been through a lot, but I think we're in a great place. We're one of the things I told Tag, I said, until I talked about it out loud, I never even had thought about it, thinking about where I was and where we are now, because I'm so close to where we want to be that I never look back and think, man, we've already came a long way. But I'm just so focused on getting where I'm going. I really don't think about that.
Amen. It always seems like you're looking uphill, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
You're always trying to get to the next plateau. Hey, we got Virginia Roots shut up and Fanny Burke shut up. This is our first live chat. You are her first live chat. Let's make it a good one for her, cool. So she comes back for more. All right. So we were talking before. You were talking about all your side hustles.
Yeah,
because farming's not your main gig, and you said it took you a while to get there, so you were doing a lot of side hustles to get there. Why don't you talk a little bit about that and tell the ups and downs of going through that whole process?
Yeah, honestly, I mean, I think you're going to be hard pressed to get ahead in modern society unless you're willing to put in extra work. I mean, I know it's not fun, but I've had a side hustle as long as I can remember. I kind of was talking to you about how I have a 16-year-old son and I'm pushing him to get a side hustle.
Yep.
So I've flipped houses. I flipped houses before it was a thing. I flipped houses because I was broke and I bought a house for $17,000 in the sheriff's sale. And I made more money than I made in 2 years working after I fixed it up by myself.
Really?
And then I was like, well, that went pretty well, so I did it 2 more times. And honestly, that's the biggest portion of how I paid for the farm. That money, and we lived, the thing we did that really was a sacrifice, especially for my wife, is we've lived in every house for 2 years to keep from paying capital gains. So that doesn't sound like too big of a deal till you think about moving all your stuff every 2 years
Oh,
and knowing that it's never going to be your forever house. So that's been tough on her. And, that was the great thing about buying the farm. Even though we're not there yet, everything we do, we know it's for us.
right, right.
And
That
so,
that's a big plus, isn't it, man?
yes.
Waking up in the morning and knowing that you're working for yourself in that respect.
We lived in a house with my son that had 1 bedroom and 1 bathroom that I got finished before we closed and had to be out of the house, one of the houses, because we listed the house, didn't think it would sell very fast, got a full price offer the first weekend, and we weren't going to say no. So we went and lived in 1 room and had 1 bathroom that I got finished before we had to move. So it's, when you were remodeling the bathroom the other day, I posted on your video about flashbacks, and It wasn't a joke.
Well, I'm not responsible for any PTSD, and this is with Yoda being a real estate agent. We were going to give our try our hand at flipping houses, and we actually bought a house and rented it. Word of advice: never rent to your own children or a family member.
You can just stop it at family, because we've done that once.
Yeah. Oh, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. Hey, we got Ghost and Skanes Girl showed up in the chat too. How you guys doing tonight? Hope you guys are having a good evening. We're talking with Jake Snyder from Dog Creek Farm, and on freesteading, you are Dog Creek.
Yep.
So I gotta ask you, how'd you come up with the name of Dog Creek Farm?
It was really complicated. Put a lot of thought into it. It's the name of the road we live on.
There you go. Where was that? I was expecting something nice and deep, and
yeah, we actually were putting a lot of thought into it, and we actually really were trying to think of a farm name. And we always, once we bought the farm, we always just call it the farm when we're talking to people. And then it became, the Dog Creek Farm, because we're talking about different pieces of real estate or something, and that just became the name. And it actually was kind of neat. And honestly, like our little logo there with the windmill and everything, that's just because when my son was little, he told us, like, it's not a farm unless it has a windmill. So, it's kind of just real basic things that, came together. But so kind of with the real estate, that's what we did. And then, so I'm working my day job. And then at that time, I was working in an office in Indianapolis. So during the day on my day job, we had to take a lunch break. So during my lunch breaks, I would go to the thrift stores, every thrift store I could get to. I would eat my sandwich while I'm driving or on the clock. I would go to the thrift stores. I would thrift. So I've sold on eBay for probably 23 years. We did the math the other day. So I've been selling on eBay for 23 years. And the great thing about eBay is, and I've talked about it as a side hustle for homesteaders, because maybe it's not all of them. Maybe it's just the ones I kind of run into, but it seems like we're always bargain hunters, and it's when you find that bargain that's not your size, or it's not your, it doesn't, work for you perfectly, like, you still have the option of buying it and selling it. And honestly, the biggest thing about eBay as far as a side income is most people can do it you don't have to buy anything. Everybody has stuff in their house they could start with. So you kind of learn the ropes with the stuff you already have. But so I would work my day job, come home, work on the houses. When it got dark, I would pack my packages for eBay. Luckily, our post office opened at, I think they open at 7, so I could drop my son off at school, go to the post office, and then get to work, by 8, and do it all over again. But
it's kind of weird listening to you, man, because we did the eBay thing too, except it instead of thrift stores, there was a insured freight place in Kansas City, the Caves, and we'd go down there and do the auctions and stuff, and we'd buy a pallet of whatever for $50 and end up selling it for 1,000. So and then unfortunately that stupid God, what's the show the where they're going through the
The storage lockers.
Yeah, the storage lockers. Everybody started doing that. So and it started driving the prices up at the auctions outrageously high, you know.
Yeah, so that's the unique thing about me is like my grandma was an antiquer. My mom was on eBay like the first year eBay existed. So I sell parts for a living, so I know electrical parts. I've been around antiques my whole life. And then so my mom would be like, would watch my eBay and be like, how'd you find that? Or how'd you know that was worth that? And I'm like, I've just done so many different things. And so like so right now, like parts are super expensive to buy because everything's shorthanded, there's such a shortage. So I haven't bought parts for probably almost 2 years. So now what I sell is just, odds and ends. And it's the best thing. There's a couple of things that just crack me up that I've sold this year. And I sold a vintage tape player, like a Pioneer radio that was a tape player for a car. It was brand new in the package. I picked up at Goodwill for $5, $4.99. Sold for, I think it was $350 or $400.
Seriously?
Yeah.
They didn't even cost that much when they were brand new.
No. And then this one's my favorite. When you're ever at a thrift store and find some vintage tidy whities still in the package, vintage underwear. Evidently, it's a thing that people really want. So you can sell a 3-pack of tidy whities for $65 or $70.
That's what I like about these chats I have with people. That's something I never thought I would know.
My wife will be like, why are you buying that? And then when it sells, I'll be like, look, well, I talked to Porterhouse the other day, and he was asking me about eBay and why I talked to him. I sold 2 boxes of miniature light bulbs that are probably like 20 years old for $50. And they weigh 4 ounces. So it cost $4.25 to ship them, so make about $40. I probably have about 3 cents in them. And I've bought a skid of them like 7 years ago, and I still have, hundreds and hundreds of them.
Well, and I think you bring up this whole conversation about side hustles. One of the things that we're always trying to promote with our community and through free trading and stuff is these alternative economies. And the side hustle for the homesteader is paramount. You always got to be doing it. And eventually the side hustle becomes your main hustle, and it can finance your homestead until the homestead is up and running. Okay, so I got to ask you, man, was pursuing the homestead life a hard sell for your wife and kid, or were they on board?
So my wife actually grew up in the city, not even like, on the edges. She was actually in the city in Indianapolis. So I can remember the first time she drove to our house, which I would say I live in the city, and it was, because it's 45 minutes away. So that's, about as close as I could think I could be to the city. So to me, that was, close. And she got there, and you would have thought she just drove to Alaska to come over or something. She's never had driven places that were more than 10 minutes away.
Oh,
and
goodness.
Now she loves it. She loves the farm. I mean, my son's 16, so he loves it. It's more about moving, and he doesn't want to move till he gets out of high school, which that was actually the deal. When we bought the farm, our plan was always a 4-year plan, knowing when he was done with school, that's when we would move. So
that's understandable.
With all
we got Terminator showed up from My Crooked Little Homestead, and Tiger 454 are here too. They showed up. So how you two doing tonight? And then my lovely bride is in the chat too. Sure she's gonna be poking for answers and stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, he loves it down there. He likes archery and firearms, so he loves that part, obviously, for the 4-wheelers and everything. I think possibly this summer, if not next year, we are going to start on a tiny house for him. So,
nice.
Even if he lives there through college, I mean, who knows what he does, but My thing is I want him to learn how to do it. For one, I want him to have skills, even though he's smart and may never use a building skill. Who knows? But I'm kind of old school in that way that, the things you're not allowed to say anymore is I want him to know how to do man stuff. I mean, I know that's kind of a dying breed, it seems, but
well, that's one thing I've noticed. So our kids were basically grown up. Our son was out of the house, and our daughter was a senior in high school whenever we moved from our suburban lot to the first homestead. And so we didn't have to deal with that. They both were not happy about it, us moving out in the country, even though it was only like 5 minutes outside of where we used to live. It was walking distance to the city limits, but they just weren't happy about it. But I'm finding out that you guys with these younger kids, and 16 is young to me, I'm sorry. Raise a kid in this lifestyle, and it teaches them a different set of values. And quite honestly, when they get older, they're going to be the leaders of their peers because of that.
My biggest fear is we're going to regret not. I mean, we live on 1.5 acres where we're at now, so we're not in town. We actually have always had animals. We just got rid of them recently because we're going to be spending the summers at the farm. So I've done meat rabbits, meat chickens, egg layers, all small livestock where we're at. But knowing how much time we're going to spend down there this year, I thought it was time to cut back and get ready for a move. But he's loves the outdoor stuff. And we actually took a bee class Saturday. So we're going to have 2 beehives we're putting in this year. We've got about 14 fruit trees planted last year and probably 30 or so berries of different kinds. So, I think we'll regret not moving, but it's just like we were talking before. I think before it started, he's smart and I was a horrible student. So there's one thing I'm not going to mess with, and that's his education. Even though I'm more worried about the education I'm giving him when we're down there, but I know that's
it's a different type of education.
Yeah.
So you're talking about everything that you've done in the past. You were telling me before you did some stuff for the first time this year, especially the process in the one animal. Why don't you tell everybody about basically what you learned this year as far as homesteading and stuff goes?
Yeah. So I've honestly, like, even as a youth, even though we didn't eat animals, like I showed rabbits, and I probably had 50 rabbits from the time I was like 8 years old, and took care of them all on my own. Did the breeding, would show them all over across the Midwest. We went to quite a few different states, but like I said, we had never raised an animal that we raised for food. So this last year was the first year that, I had animals that I raised for food and processed them. So I processed all of our rabbits. I think I processed almost 40 when we were said and done. And then the big thing was I've processed deer, so I guess that's not true. I had processed before, but only deer. And but we processed 4 pigs here, and then I actually went down to Jason, Kentucky Sustainable Living's place, and processed a pig with him down there. And Shelly from Two Old Crows was over there, and some other people. So, but the first go round, we processed 4 pigs, and me and one other guy had processed deer before. The other 2 people had never processed an animal, period. And the only guy that had experience, his dad was the butcher and he was the expert, did not show up. So we, YouTube. I mean, did we do everything right? Of course not.
No.
We got pork burger, sausage with a mix. We cut the pork chops. We cut the bacon, the belly, of course. But I mean, we didn't know how. We thought we figured out a couple of the hams, but the picnic, shoulder roast, and the different things. But honestly, we eat pork burgers once a week in the summer anyway. So having a ton of grind was not a problem for us, but we didn't get all the fancy cuts. But I can tell you one thing, the confidence you get after doing that is, now I can refine my skills, I think, and take it to the next level. But it's empowering. That's the only way I can really put it. I mean, to take control of your, food like that. And then I processed chickens once, but yeah, it was I'm a learner by like, I love to dig into stuff and learn about it. So kind of the homesteading's the same way. I mean, I don't know what exactly ours will look like when it's done, but I love to learn about kind of everything I can find.
You said something about the taste too.
Oh yeah, the taste is, I mean, yeah, I jokingly said I had to ask my wife if, if does this pork really taste better, or is it just like mentally because, kind of like when you pick something out of your garden, like it's always tastes better to you. But she's like, no, she confirmed. And we already bought our pork from a farmer. So, we didn't buy it from the store anyway, but now I don't think we'll ever be able to, buy from a grocery store again.
Yeah, it gets hard. That's one of the things that's been killing me about the last year is because I was telling Tag and I were talking the other day, and they're doing all the kind of stuff that you're doing on their place, and it's really kind of hard for me because we used to be doing that kind of stuff when everybody else was trying to get to their homestead, So we're trying to build this place out, and we're just now starting to get back where we can think about doing all the stuff we used to do, and I'm really excited that this year's going to be a really great year for us. Seriously,
That's
sounds like you're off to a good start too.
The farm's about 3 hours away from where we live, so it's definitely close enough to get down there. But all the work I do down there, like it can be pretty stressful. We took a 900 square foot cabin from a place where actually, when I looked at the property in the dark, I thought we would have to burn it down. And we've turned that into the nicest. It's small, but it's finish wise is the nicest place I've ever done. And I did it all myself. So, the one thing you learn when you do it yourself, it's not the cost, like to get a premium product. It doesn't cost that much more when you're doing it yourself. Where if you were hiring somebody, they just mark it up more because they think you can afford it. I don't know, but a lot of times you can get a premium look without really spending as much as you would think.
Yeah, the remodel of our kitchen at the old place kind of broke us from paying contractors. Now I'm stuck doing it all myself now, and luckily I know how to do all that. I've being homeowners as long as we have, I've learned how to do all the stuff that's important, and then I know people that know how to do the stuff that I don't want to do or don't know how to do.
Yeah, sometimes I've priced a few things because with it being far away, like last year, I was like, man, I'm just tired of working. I want to go down there and have fun for once. But every time I'd get a price, I'd be like, I guess we're going to do that ourselves.
Well, you know what? That's the thing about it, though. If you want to get more mileage out of your money, then you'd have to put a little bit of sweat equity into it when you're building your homestead. I think a lot of people, you made the comment while we were talking before that people are always looking for the easy answer.
Yeah.
And when it comes to being self-sufficient, modernly self-sufficient, as we like to call it, and being free of the system, that's the only way to do it. It's the only way you can do it, and you've been on this remarkable journey to get where you are. Do you feel freer today than you used to?
Oh yeah. I mean, without a question.
And even more free tomorrow?
Oh yeah.
Figuratively?
Definitely. I mean, the crazy thing is, this society, you just get locked into buying stuff and thinking you need more and more and more. And, it's just honestly, the whole system's the trap. They get you locked in, and then I can remember the first time we were debt free and didn't have a mortgage, and we wanted a nicer house, and we went and looked at a few houses, or just looked, online, and we were like, well, there's no way we're going to spend that much money. And what we would have had to spend to get something nicer than what we had, because we bought it cheap, put all the work in, even though we would have made money, it didn't make sense. But, that's so we went back in debt recently. We bought 50 more acres. So it's the farm next that borders our farm. And I actually thought it was right when Tag did his presentation, I think at Self-Reliance last time, when he talked about the only thing he would go in debt again was for land. that's actually when that's the first time I'd ever seen him and how I met you and kind of everybody else in this group. But I just messaged him and I was like, hey, this is what I'm going through right now. I feel like you were talking to me during that thing. I just wanted to say thanks because honestly, the thought of going back into debt after being totally debt free for around 4 years, I think a little over 4 years. And, but he said a few things. For one, you can control your neighbors. So it's not that, well, because we had 100 acres and we bought 50. We don't need all that, but you don't know who's going to get the 50 next to you. The only thing on the 50 acres next to us was only 20 feet from our property line and where all of our house and cabin and everything else is. So it used to be one farm. So it was kind of the central hub. So,
Okay.
Even though they had 50 acres, the chances are the barn and the tiny house and everything that's there is right next to the property line. So I'm sure that's where they will expand.
Yeah.
But yeah, going back into debt. And I got locked in before. Honestly, I was dealing with a small bank and I called the bank and I'm like, hey, is my paperwork done yet? And he's like, no, we're working on this and that. I go, listen, the Fed's meeting tomorrow. I'm like, the Fed's meeting tomorrow. And this was like 4 rate hikes ago, but I'm like, I want this done. And he's like, how few people talk to me about that? And I'm like, well, he's like, and then he explained kind of, they only have a few branches and they're independently owned. And he sent me some DocuSign stuff and had me do some paperwork. And he's like, we can lock you in. And then when we get the paperwork done, if it happens to go down, we'll revisit it if it takes that long. But of course, as we know, nothing's went down.
Yeah.
But even that, it was kind of shocking to have a bank person talk to you about how just immune the average person is to thinking about interest rates. And I don't know, that's kind of just mind blowing to me.
You want to have a conversation with that. You need to, when you're at Self-Reliance Festival next month, you need to talk to Yoda about that. Cause she got some stories about people buying houses and how they basically didn't know what was going on and were shocked by the entire process.
Well, it's kind of like when you buy a car, they never go in and ask, how much you want to spend. It's always, well, how much, what payment can you afford? They don't care how long you have to pay for it, what your rate is,
Well, they make more money that way.
Yeah.
They make more money.
Yeah.
So, all right. So you made the comment about controlling your neighbor. And I'm going to use that as a segue into building community. And that's what actually got me interested in your story was talking with Jason when I did the interview with him from Kentucky Sustainable. He said that you are trying to do the same thing in Indiana that he's doing there in Kentucky. And I thought that is fantastic, and especially after he went through and he told me how big that network is.
Yeah, it's impressive. So honestly, the first thing I did after I heard Jason talk on YouTube, I think it was either on your channel or Tag's channel. You guys have both had him on, but whoever I heard first, I heard him and I'm like, my first thought is you don't always have to reinvent the wheel. Like the first thing I did is I messaged Jason and I'm like, hey, I'm not from Kentucky, because that's the first question they ask when you go to apply for their, be in their group. If you're not from Kentucky, don't apply. So I wasn't going to lie. I just said, hey, I'm not from Kentucky, but I'm only 2 hours from Jason. Our farm's only 2 hours and 10 minutes from Jason. And I said, I think what you're doing is great. I think, honestly, every state should do this. I want to come meet you. I want to get together in person, and I want to figure out how I can copy what you're doing. Now, I'll tell you right now, man, it is hard. It is hard. And part of that's me. I'm new to social media. Have 10 YouTube videos. I have 130 people on our Indiana Sustainable Living group on Facebook. But that's all coming from somebody that's never really been on social media. I've never really talked to anybody about what I believe or, what I do. I got lucky when I moved down there, or when we bought the farm, I needed to buy a tractor. So I literally got on Facebook because there was I used to use my mom's Facebook account, and she's like, I'm not giving you my password anymore. Sign up yourself and message the person because they only had Messenger for this tractor. And so I messaged them, and then of course, being a buyer and seller, I'm like, whoa, marketplace. So I've bought and sold. Well, I buy a lot on marketplace. I don't sell there because I honestly don't want to deal with the amount of questions people have. But through that, it was when COVID happened, I had never hatched eggs. I did it when I was a kid, but I had my son at home, not going to school. I was like, perfect thing for him. I got an incubator. I'm like, so I got on there, I'm going to buy hatching eggs. So I found hatching eggs from a guy, Chasing Dreams Homestead. He's in Southern Indiana. He's honestly became Chase's, he's honestly became like a brother to me. Um, he he's like, well, I had picked up the processing equipment for the chickens the same day that I mentioned I bought the chicken processing set. So I was coming back from Kentucky. I meet him well, for one, he's like, meet me at the dollar store. And I'm like, okay, like, why can't I come to your house? Well, I guess it's because you don't want murderers coming to your house. But, I've never been on Marketplace, so I didn't know that. But he's like, meet me at the dollar store. So I'm like, okay. So I'm waiting at the dollar store. He pulls up. I buy his hatching eggs. I get to talking to him. He's like, hey, you should join my Facebook group. I'm like, I don't know what a Facebook group is. He's like, what? And so he's telling me this, and he's like, so we just start talking about homesteading. It's probably one of the first people I've openly talked to about what I really, do homesteading wise. And he's like asking all these questions about what they're doing. I'm like, man, I got to show you what's in my trailer. And it was the Featherman processing set. And he's like, he just couldn't believe it. And he's like, what are you going to do with that? I go, I don't even have meat chickens right now, but like my goal is I bought this farm in Southern Indiana and I want to set up a processing plant where I can process basically everything from my farm, but I want to have it where other people can come over and use it. And, maybe somebody teaches a class there. Not me. I'm not that good, but we'll come to find out he's already doing all that stuff. And then he kind of got me turned on to Facebook, which got me turned on to YouTube. I mean, I would look something up on YouTube, like how to do something, but I didn't realize there was these networks forming or, groups forming and people communicating. I just didn't know any of that. And so he got me started, and then I heard Tag Speech, and it's kind of been all downhill from there. Just the amount of people I've met's been great. One thing I've noticed, like in Indiana, and kind of so I purposely, like, it's Indiana Sustainable Living. It's not Dog Creek Farm Group. It's not, because I hope at some point everybody has ownership in that. Like, it's not about me. It's not about my farm. I want it to bring everybody's together, because there's quite a few groups in Indiana that I've come to find, but everybody's kind of doing their own thing and thinks they're the only person doing it. I know, like, when I had these ideas, I thought, man, people will think I'm nuts. Nobody else is doing this. And then there's a guy I met at a homesteading expo that's 30 minutes from me that has 6 tiny houses on his property, almost like a commune. He runs the farm and has interns come in. I mean, they're raising 7 acres of vegetable crops. They're raising eggs. They don't do meat chickens. They do cattle. I mean, he has like an 80-acre farm. I went and looked at it. It's just a beautiful place. And, he's teaching classes and has interns come in, every few years. And I mean, honestly, it's a lot of the vision I had for my farm. And I thought, nobody's doing this. And then there's somebody 30 minutes from me that's doing the same thing. So I think there's a lot of people that want to learn. It's just trying to connect the dots for some of them.
That's one thing we found out whenever we joined the Midwest Preparedness Group. That's how we got into the whole circle here was I went to one of the campouts, and one thing led to another, and here we are, part of the community. And that's I tell people the hardest part in building these circles and building your networks is just the first conversation, because you don't know what you don't know what everybody else has. You don't know what they're doing. And the guy next door, I work with a guy at my job who is into homesteading. I worked with him for a year until we had our first potluck, and he showed up, and I was like, Steve, what are you doing here? He's like, well, I got a homestead over here. I was like, really? Didn't even know it. You know, and I was in his office taking care of his computer and everything. So that
I think we're naturally kind of guarded anyway. At least I know I am. And even when I'm talking, like you're never, almost like your pantry video the other day, you're like, hey, I'm not showing you everything, but you're still showing people to try to help them. But I think I've always been naturally guarded. And I'm usually not the person, like, I'm not the person who usually walks into a group of people and talks to everybody. Like, that's just, and we went to a homesteading event not long ago. My wife was like, are you running for mayor? She's like, everybody knows who you are. People know. And Indiana Mike was actually there. And she's like, how do these people know who you are?
making connections. So you said your group's growing. You started out. Are you doing anything special? The reason I'm asking you is if somebody's watching this video and they're like, this is such a great idea. How do I do this? What would be the first step you would tell these people to start building this network?
So my first step was honestly, so my buddy Chase that I mentioned earlier already had an event. So he had an event he just called it a homesteader meet and greet. It was at a state park. It was just out in the field. And honestly, we went to that, me and my wife. It was 2 hours and 10 minutes from our house. We went there. We were there for 5 minutes. I looked at my wife. I'm like, let's see if we can get out of here without anybody noticing. And I hadn't talked to a single person. And basically, like, somebody saw us kind of scooting out and started talking to us. And we ended up staying there for hours. And so Chase was like, hey, I'm going to have another event. And like I said, we've become really close friends. I mean, we do stuff whenever we can, with me being that far away. But when we're at the farm and he's available, the family usually comes over. But he's scheduling another event. And I'm like, I'm watching YouTube now and I see all these people having events at community centers and stuff. And I'm like, so I get on Google, of course, and I'm like, hey, where's a community center? Well, there's one in the same town where the state park is that's free. And I call him. It's not real expensive. I'm like, he already had the date. So I check the date. It's available. I book it. I send the deposit. I send this. And the next call I made was another homesteader I met that runs. Well, he's not a homesteader. He's a farmer. I mean, I look at him and call him a homesteader because he's doing the same things, but he's just doing it on a larger scale. And he came from Louisville. He had lived in the city his whole life. He went from doing that to being a full-time farmer in 8 years. He runs a meat CSA. They deliver, tons of meat throughout Louisville. And I know most people, I know a lot of people want to make their homestead their job. So the next thing I did is I called Luke, and he speaks at different places. And I'm like, hey, how much would you charge to come do this event? And he's like, well, what's it for? And I'm like, listen, I don't know if anybody will be there. I don't know what it'll be, but I just want to pay for this and I want to pay you. And, I don't want to talk about, like, I don't know what it turns into, but I don't want to, and he's like, gave me a price. Wasn't a lot. I'm like, put it on your calendar. And then I called Chase after all this and I'm like, hey, Chase, how do you feel about me helping with the event you're already thinking about? He's like, oh yeah. What do you have in mind? I go, I have this building rented. I have this speaker booked. Let's build it from there. He's like, what? I go, yeah. I go, my wife doesn't like to stand in the cold. She likes heat. So in the spring, you don't know if it's going to be 30 or 70 in Indiana. So this building has heat. They have a kitchen. He's like, you already did all this? And I was like, yes. And I go, here's the kicker. I don't want you to tell anybody that this is anything but your event. Like, I'm not doing this to try to be like take credit or anything. And I just want to help you build this event. And the first thing he did was got on there, did a video, said, this is what Jake did for us. I'm pushing Jake to get more involved. He needs to talk to people. He has a great story. He needs to make a YouTube video. He needs to talk to more people. And I was like, well, okay, I guess I should do this now. And
change the course.
Honestly, yeah, the first step is just to put yourself out there like that. It's just, now I hope to keep building off this, but the event we're having in Southern Indiana, it's April 29th this year. we probably have close to 25 speakers. So after that first speaker that I got, I wanted to get somebody kind of as a keynote, but after that happened, we had all kinds of people from the community volunteer to come talk about what they know about herbal medicine, plant starts, greenhouse starts. I'm actually going to talk about trapping, which is the one thing I have to throw in at some point tonight. A trapping story, because Jason gave you his hunting story, and I think my trapping story is better. So I'm just going to say that.
Before we get off here, remind if I don't bring it up, you remind me.
So yeah. So
well, and I think you highlight. I think what you're talking about highlights something that we talked about last night on our Tuesday on our live. Nothing happens by accident. And we learned the hard way, and we ended up better off because of it. Thank God. But we learned the hard way that a community is not going to build itself if you're not involved. And I think that's the first change of mindset that most people need to make is you can't wait around for community to form for somebody else.
And the other thing I'd say about the community is, I mentioned it to you earlier. So when we first bought this place, it's 3 hours from any of our family. So my first thought is, the first person I have to find somebody that if I'm not home, I know can be there if my wife needs something. So I'm like, even though I've never done it before, I'm going to make sure I meet my neighbors. And we were down there. My dad and brother were down there actually working. And one of my neighbors came rolling up, and he pulled up there and he's like, "Who are you guys?" And they're like, "Well, we're just here working on this cabin." And he's like, "Well, you're not driving the vehicle that I usually see here." And they're like, "Well, that's," my dad's like, "Well, that's my son." And he's like, "Okay." And he's like, "Here's my name and phone number." And at first I didn't go down to meet him. And then I actually was down there and I had a plumbing part break. And I rode her side by side down there, and I'm like, "Hey, Kelly," because his name's Kelly. I'm like, "Hey, Kelly, is there any chance you have a 1/2-inch PEX connector? It's down there. There's not, the home stores are 40 minutes away and the hardware stores aren't open on Sunday." And he's like, "I think I do." This guy dug around his garage for 20 minutes talking to me. He hands me the connector and he's like, "What's your name?" I go, "Well, we met the other day. I'm Jake from the cabin." And he's like, "Oh, total." So here's a guy that I'd only met one time. He didn't even remember who I was, that dug through his garage for 20 minutes, gave me a part, and then asked who I was. And I was like, well, this guy's definitely the type of guy that, I want to get to know.
Yeah.
And after that, every time I see somebody down there, I've had a few people that, I'll probably never talk to again, but it's rural. And honestly, they look at us like city people, even though, I think I fit in just fine. And if you're going to move and try to change people, you should probably not move.
Yeah.
But I'm moving there to fit in, not to try to change anything. So
yeah. we were so focused on the change in the move last year that we did not get out to meet our neighbors like we should have. We're just now starting to meet them and interact with them. And I really wish we would have done it when we first moved out here. And that was probably one of the biggest mistakes we made when we moved out here.
I've never done it in my life. I lived in town and didn't know my neighbors. I've never done it, but I tell you what, we have internet. We have actually a really good internet there now. So we have cameras, but before the internet came, I never worried. I knew if somebody pulled in my driveway, there's only 5 houses on probably 4 or 5 miles of road. So there's not much traffic. And Kelly, my one neighbor, lives on the corner and he's at home all the time pretty much. So I didn't worry too much, but it's just something about having those people close by. And I've really met a lot of people that are going to help us with different things. Of course, a few things I had already done that if I would have known them before, I put a dam, I basically put a dam in on our spring head, and it was on a 30-foot rock face. And there's a hole in the bottom of that has a natural spring coming out of it. And I've plumbed a house before, but I've never developed a spring before. And even with YouTube, there wasn't a lot of,
I'll bet.
And my buddy's like, you should have filmed that. That would have been a great video. I said, well, I don't really know how to edit. And I don't think there would have been a video left after you took out the cuss words. I mean, I'm laying in a creek, the water's flowing, I can't get it to stop. I mean, I'm literally about just ready to give up. And honestly, I told myself, I'm like, I'm gonna finish it, and if it doesn't work, then I'll, regroup. But I finished it and it worked.
Well, I'll tell you what, as far as that goes, you're going to find out the more you do it, creating content, the less and less you'll go, oh, I should have filmed that. In fact, a lot of our videos around here, you see stuff after the fact. It's like, oh, I should probably mention this to people and tell them how I did it, even if I don't show them.
Well, you talked about it on a live. It's hard to film something when you're actually working. And like
definitely.
Chase has probably filmed as much on working on our place at the farm, because he'll come over to help me and he'll film and I'll work. And I always joke that he's just there to film because that's the only time we get any filming done.
Well,
But
having your own cameraman's a big plus whenever you're doing this kind of stuff.
I'm trying to get my son. So he's 16, so it depends on the day. But he's this last couple of weeks is probably the most interested he's been in everything. I thought of you. We talked a lot about, you talked about firearms multiple times on the channel, so I know it's fine. But I got him I think it's the Glock 44. It's basically the 22 caliber Glock, and it's the same size as a Glock 19. So I knew I could buy him holsters and everything. And because he's as big or bigger than me, so it's not size, but I want him to get comfortable shooting it. And he's like, why don't we clean our guns? And I'm like, well, I guess because I'm lazy. I don't really know. I just shoot. And he's like, well, I watched a video and you're supposed to clean them and you're supposed to use this brush and I go, Grant, I have all the tools. And I go, tell you what, you watch a couple YouTube videos, figure out how to, take your pistol apart and clean it, and we'll clean it. And he comes down, he's like, you ready? I go, yeah. I getting the stuff out and I look over, he already has a slide off, taking springs off. And I'm like, wait a minute, because I'm scared to death he won't know how to put it back together. And I'm like, wait a minute, so I can watch you. And he already had it stripped down, and he stripped it down, cleaned it, put it back together. And then he's like, well, let's clean, yours. And so this was the first year I've ever taken classes. So I took self-defense classes from a local range, and best money. I mean,
oh, absolutely.
Best money you could ever spend. I mean, I've shot my whole life. We're in the country, but I've never learned anything. But we took my pistol apart. I took 3 different classes with my pistol, 500 rounds a class, and then just shooting besides that. So, I mean, I said, well, this is what a dirty pistol looks like. And
well, there's a reason why the U.S. government gives Glock to every third world country and that we're friends with, because of stuff exactly like that. You can run that many rounds through it, and it won't break it.
Yeah, it's so yeah. Actually, I bought the Glock and put all the thought into it for him to get a Glock 19, and we went to the gun show I think last week, and he got a SIG. So all my deep thought into reasoning, I told him he saved his money. I mean, holidays, and his birthday is at Christmas too. So basically half the people give him money for one holiday or the other. So he has a lot of money for a 16-year-old kid. And I said,
well, my hat's off for you getting training, because I'm a firm believer in organized training. I mean, you pay an expert to teach you what they know. Seriously.
The first class I came home and my wife said, what did you learn? I said, I learned how to be a badass. Like, you just learn so much. It's amazing. Like,
yeah.
I'm honest. I've always been one to go to classes or, sign up, and even if they cost money, I've always been one to try to learn. But it was funny because we were almost done with my very first class, and I missed 3 times in a row. And honestly, I probably haven't shot 600 rounds at one time very many times in my life with just my pistol. And I think I was just getting tired, but I looked at him. I'm like, I'm not sure what I'm doing. And he looks back at me. He's like, I wasn't really watching. You haven't missed. And he goes, I thought you told me you've never shot before. I go, no, I've never shot at a public place. He goes, well, that explains a lot. But I was nervous about it. I mean, I'm not going to lie. It was intimidating to me. In fact, I took my first two classes were both private, basically because I mean, I didn't know. Like, and he basically said, listen, after those classes, he's like, you need to take the group classes. They're harder. Like, as you advance, you'll need other people with you for the class. He's like, you're ready to take them. You were ready when you came. I said, okay. But I mean, even at that, like if the guy, like I know this guy, his private class was $30 more than the regular class. Like for me, I mean, but
He
find
kind of
somebody you're comfortable with.
pushed you outside your comfort zone, didn't he?
Oh yeah.
Telling you go to that group class. That's one of the big things about the whole building community. And from the way you're talking is this whole process of building this network. You've been stepping outside your comfort zone time and time again. And,
oh, definitely.
Do you find it gets easier over time?
100%. Like getting on here and talking to you tonight. Like my wife was talking to me before I came on. I'm like, she's like, what are you going to do? What are you going to say? I'm like, I'm just going to get on there and talk and it'll be fine. But like the first time I'd ever talked to somebody was with Tag. And it was funny. I told Tag afterwards, I actually, for my real job, we closed a $11 million job that day. So biggest order I've ever closed on my own.
Wow.
And that night was my interview with Tag. That day job stuff, I didn't, drop a bead of sweat. When I was on there with Tag, when I got off, my clothes were drenched with sweat from being so nervous to talk on the internet.
Know the feeling.
Now
I was the same way. I did an interview with Billy Bond there at Self-Reliance Festival, telling him about my my $1.2 million hat, and I got done with that, and I was just like worn out.
Yeah, it's funny, and I mean I've only done 2 or 3 since, but like after you knock that first one out, and like when you just get to go on and talk about stuff you're passionate about, it's honestly it's easy. I mean,
Well, and that's one of the reasons why we do these interviews. Started doing these things is because, you have to be evangelical to a certain extent. You have to be evangelical about it, no matter what your passion is. Mine was permaculture. I was evangelical. That was what I could talk to people about without any problem. And it's turned into, after being involved with Tag and Hacks for the Homesteader and B and all that group, it's kind of mutated into self-sufficiency and freedom, but you got to put yourself out there. And I think that's one of the key ingredients of building community and networks is being evangelical. And you cannot, you said it earlier, you alluded to it. Most preppers keep things, they keep it very close to the chest because they're afraid. There's so many people out there talking about people that will take advantage of you and people that are going to take all your stuff if they know what you have. And you can't build a network and you can't build a community if you're like that. There has to be, you have to find people and just part of the problem is you're going to expose yourself to people that are not going to be friends. They're not going to be part of your community. And you just have to accept that if you want to build something that's more important than just your little safety circle.
Yeah, that's one of the things. So when I first started, I literally did like 3 YouTube videos, which I still only have like 11, so this wasn't very long ago. But I did a few videos. I started on Facebook, and I told Jason and Chase 2 different times the same thing. I'm like, yeah, this social media is not for me. I'm like, nah, this isn't for me. And it wasn't even stuff directed at me. It's stuff I watched them. Like I watched them deal with stuff, and I'm like, why? Like why? But then it's like you said, you have to deal with that. I think about all the good people I've met now. Like if you don't deal with those few people, you don't get to meet everybody else. So it's just the trade-off.
Yeah, and I think I think what you're doing is part of this organic movement that's all across the country, because there's more and more people like you and Jason and us that we're building these little circles. And like you said, you're finding these little pockets of people all around you that you didn't know existed. And I think that's one of the best things about freesteading. And I've said this, people are going to get tired of me saying this, is you get in the state group there and you're going to meet people that are right around the corner from you, and you can start building your network and your community that way, and it's quite honestly, doing it through freesteading is a lot safer than doing it through Facebook or some other media platform, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I'm not saying you couldn't have a bad person anywhere, but those people got there probably by knowing somebody or being part of some other group, where Facebook's just anybody. I mean,
right. So. And at the very base level, semi like-minded.
Yeah.
And if you can find a group, and I'm not, I tell people go out to freesteading, but if you don't want to do freesteading, find someplace else. PrepperNet has their social networking thing. Couple other people are setting things up. Find someplace where you can find like-minded people, just as a base to start from.
Yeah. And just talk to people at stuff you go to. Talk to people there. It's something I've never done, but before, but that's
okay. You said something earlier about the very first one you went to and how you were trying to sneak out.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to give you, this is my bit of advice for you guys doing an event like that. Anybody, not just you, but anybody. So have you seen Data on Tags live streams, Going Deep with Data? Okay. Mm-hmm. Data is, just by nature of his personality, he is the greeter of our group. And it doesn't matter who you are. If you showed up to one of the Midwest Preparedness Festivals, within the first 5 minutes of you being there, he was coming over and he was introducing himself and he was asking you who you were and just being very personable and making you feel welcome. If you're going to do an event to bring people together, you need to have a designated Data or a designated greeter, somebody that will engage people. Because he came up, I wasn't even done getting stuff out of my vehicle, and he's over there asking me if I needed a hand and just getting everybody, having me meet everybody.
I guess according to my wife at the last event, that was me.
There you go.
I never stopped talking, but
there you go.
It's yeah, I can see that. There was a few people, and so the last event was just another person that went to one of Chase's events that had an event much farther north. So he's in southern Indiana, where my farm's at. She's in, I would say, like central. I would call it central Indiana, and she's like, hey, I'm going to have the meetup. And so anything that's within a few hours, minimum, like we're going to try to go unless we have something. Well, in fact, that event, we had to leave a little early because for my day job, the rodeo was in town, and I had a customer that I was taking him and 15 of his family members to the rodeo that night. But it was a long day, actually.
Good salesman. Okay. Yoda wanted me to tell you about Understanding Ag. So it's a group. Shane, I cannot remember his last name. He gave a speech at our last potluck about soil health. It was probably one of the best speeches I've ever heard, or presentations about soil health. They travel around and give these presentations to people. I would go to it's understandingag.com, I think. It's Understanding Ag is the name of it. But I would reach out and if you're looking for a speaker with a really good presentation, they're ones to contact, because he'll come out. He'll give you. It was a good presentation, and like I said on the live stream, it wasn't anything I really didn't know before, but he put it together in a manner that I could really understand what I already knew, and he kind of convicted me. I am convicted to make my soil out here better this fall.
Because the other thing I learned once you start helping with these is, we haven't even had the spring event, and now we're trying to figure out the fall event. And the people that behind the scenes, like, it's a lot of work. I don't know if everybody realizes. If you're in a group like that and you have some people that it's probably even more work than you think it is.
That's why we love Spags, because Yoda and I helped put three of the campouts together. This is before they became the festival. We helped put 3 campouts together, and I'm telling you, man, after those 3, I was like, I really don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, it's my wife asked me one time, she's like, are you still working on the spring one? I go, yes. But now we're worried. Like I said, we had a huge response. We ended up having like 6. Yeah, I know Jason knows it's a lot of work. We ended up having, I think, 6 or 7 people step up to sponsor for our spring event. So we were able to do shirts and do some other stuff. And then that'll hopefully already start paying, because I mean, it's a free event, but nothing's free.
No.
So, but through that, we were able to have like a guy that's going to cook for lunch, shirts. Now we can pay for the event center next time instead of somebody paying for it. I'm actually working, because I'm a wheeler dealer and a reseller. I've already got stuff thank you. I've already got stuff put back for the like a silent auction. Like I have a Milwaukee tool put back. I have a fishing pole, Lou's fishing pole put, like all stuff that I picked up for 70% off, that I'm just sticking back, not on eBay, but putting back for a silent auction. And then hopefully I'll have it done, but I'm going to build an antler lamp. That's something I used to do a lot of when I was,
nice.
So that was my side hustle before. When my grandpa had the sawmill, we would do shows, and we would do log furniture and antler lamps. So I was
you go shed hunting?
I've found a few sheds, but I honestly like the elk sheds. And I can tell you one of the reasons I quit doing it is because the dog chew business. So the dog chew business took sheds that used to be very inexpensive and made them really expensive.
Yeah.
So, but I know we're getting long on time, but I want to share one story with you.
Okay, so I was going to ask you, since we're talking about sheds, let's talk. I want to hear this trapping story.
So, Jason had his hunting story, but it's maybe not as crazy. But if you're the guy, it's pretty crazy. So I would run, because I had to be at work, I think at that time at 7:30 in Indy. So I would run my trap line at 3 a.m. So I would run it on my 4-wheeler with a headlamp. And that year, my best year, I ran my trap line for 2 weeks, and I caught 38 coyotes and tons of raccoons and everything else. But so I'm running my trap line, just a headlamp. I pull up, jump. In your mind, you're running. I think I was running between 30 and 40 traps, but in your mind, you always know where they're at. And I pull up on it, and I'm like, man, I know I had a dog proof trap there set close to a coyote trap, hoping to catch the raccoon in that instead of my coyote set. And I'm like, I thought I had a trap here. I pull up, pitch black, headlamp, headlight. So my 4-wheeler's not shining on the set, just my headlamp. And I'm like, I don't know where this is. I jump off my 4-wheeler. Well, there was a huge boar coon in this trap, and he had pulled the chain all the way the opposite direction. So I thought I knew where it was staked. I didn't. I was standing right on the stake, and that thing came after me. And not only did it scare the crap out of me, I almost probably shot myself. I almost got bit by the raccoon. And needless to say, I was much more careful running my traps.
Was there a girly scream involved?
Oh, yeah, I'm guaranteed. But yeah, somebody was just we were just talking about trapping the other day, and I said, I guess it's just like every kid wants to be a mountain man. And, that's how I got into trapping. And I'm actually giving away 6 dog proof traps. I'm going to do 2 lots of 3 for our meetup. And I'm going to give 2. Yeah, live and learn. That's right. I'm going to give 2 sets of 3 dog proof traps for a youth giveaway at our meetup. Because being homesteader meetup, I'm thinking it's a great way to protect your chicken coops and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. They're not cat proof, because a cat can get its paw in there, but they are dog proof, so you don't have to worry about catching a dog or anything. And I put snaps on them so they can you don't have to have any trapping equipment. So as long as a parent will let their kid trap, they'll be able to go trap the chicken coops and everything else. because a lot of stuff you have in your cabinets, you can use a pie filling. There's a lot of stuff I'll be able to show them to use for bait. So basically it keeps them from having to buy any supplies and still be able to run a few traps. But I don't know why it's kind of a dying art. The fur's not worth a lot anymore. So it's definitely a dying thing. But I've always been passionate about
we've
it.
used traps. We've used traps before. We used live traps though. And we had a lot of success with it, but then we had this one female raccoon that I swear to God, she knew how to open the trap up from the inside. She could, I was wiring stuff to the back of the cage and she was getting in and stealing it, and unfortunately we had to resort to some more drastic measures because they were killing our chickens.
Well, I lost quite a few chickens 3 years ago, and my wife was at the dentist and she's like, yeah, my husband's caught, 7 raccoons and 6 possums. And the dentist goes, that's so nice of you to relocate those. And she said, yeah, it is. But yeah, they did get relocated.
I'm not gonna lie. I was relocating them for the first couple of years.
They'll usually come back.
Well, so here's what I would do. I had a can of orange construction spray paint, and I would paint a great big orange on their side. And then I would take them to this bridge that was 2 creeks away from us. It's about 4 miles away from us. And there weren't any houses within a couple miles of this bridge. And I would let them out right there. And I'm like, okay, if I see a raccoon with an orange circle on it, I'm going to shoot it. Yeah. Because I don't want to, I never wanted to kill them for doing what animals are going to do. But then it got to the point where I sat down and I figured out, in fact, there's a video, one of the first videos I did, I figured out that within like a 3-week period, they killed $500 worth of income for me, between the price they're having to re-get the birds and the eggs we could have sold and the meat. I mean, that was $500, and one raccoon can do that over the course of a night or two.
Yeah, and because they just kill everything. They don't kill something and eat it. They just kill everything.
Right.
But yeah, that's that. Actually, I tried to get out of that a long time ago, but because I said we have so many speakers now, I really don't need to speak. And they're like, no, you're speaking.
There you go. Getting us stuck in live trap. Yeah, that's. I think I would have to give up the live trap for a little while.
We've caught a few skunks, but we shoot them from a distance.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my first, and one of the reasons I kind of like talking about trapping, and I think too, is so my first time I ever trapped, I had no trapping license. I was a kid, and I used to garage sale with my grandma because she was the antiquer and a bargainer. And so I found a guy and I guarantee she had to give me some extra money because I probably didn't have enough, but I bought 4 traps off some guy at a garage sale. And I took those things out in the woods, and I had every one of them set, and they were just laying on top of the ground. Who knows? But I thought it was great running around the woods.
Oh yeah, so. Absolutely. We did. We lived down in the Ozarks when I was a kid, and we used to do that. The next door neighbor, we lived in town, but the next door neighbor had these traps, and we'd go trap rabbits and coyotes and stuff. So yeah, it's as a kid, man, it's fun. I mean,
coyotes went up to almost $40 a pelt in Indiana, probably like 8 years ago. And
really?
That's the year that I decided I was going to run. Now it's probably longer than that. Might have been a little longer, but that's the year I decided I'm all in this year. I'm running my traps at 3 a.m. I finished all my fur. I shipped it off to auction. And that year, the market went from $40 to $3.
Ouch.
So, I mean, you never do it for the money anyway, but I would have kept it all because it would have looked cool. But
yeah. Oh, and this is off the topics that we were talking about, but every now and then you get that one coyote pelt that it looks like it's been groomed. Yeah. Seriously, you get that usually they're thin, they got mange, they got cockleburs in them, but every now and then you get that one that's just that that golden color, and they're all fluffy and would make a really good mountain man hat.
Yeah, I think that's how I knew I did it right this time. Was I finished all that fur in our attached garage, and my wife's washer and dryer was in the garage. So that was, I think, the second year we were married. So I think after she got through that, I think I'm good for pretty much anything. So
okay. As far as building a community, we know where you are now. Where are you trying to? Where are you looking to go with? Well, first let's talk about the homestead. Where are you guys going to go with the homestead once you get out there? I mean, what are your plans going up forward?
We're honestly, it should be after this year. We'll have it almost completely set up. Hopefully, I mean, I'm working on fence this year. This was my last year. I ran into the row cropper. So I've already let him know this will be his last year in there. So then I'll get all the tillable land back into pasture, and theoretically that pasture should be ready to put animals on the year we move there.
Nice.
Getting my water developed was a big thing. I have 3 more springs on the property just that I know of. So I'm working on developing some more of those, probably just worried about the livestock load, making sure I have enough water.
Mm-hmm.
But we plan on running livestock. Honestly, we hope to be pretty sustainable. I mean, with 150 acres, basically 60 acres of pasture, balances a lot of woods, and then of course the little home site. I mean, we're really confident. I mean, because I'm not in just the homesteading and prepping. I'm also visited the farm side and really studied that. I mean, I'm really confident that we can be. I mean, we're not going to have a salt mine, so we're going to buy salt. But I mean, everybody talks about, well, you're not going to be sustainable. You don't have this or that. I get it. But I feel like we're going to have an opportunity to be really, really close to being very far along for being sustainable.
Well, and that's why we call it modern self-sufficiency. And because you're right. In modern day America, you cannot be self-sufficient.
I'm not going to try. Like, I'm not going to spend time doing something that doesn't make sense right now.
You can get as close as you can by having the materials and the knowledge and the ability to take care of these problems that pop up. So that's the ultimate goal. That's the ultimate goal. I've said it before. Homesteading is the ultimate expression of preparedness, just plain and simple.
So that's it's kind of, we've tried to develop we'll definitely be putting in a greenhouse. I might put in a small true greenhouse and then a hoop house. Putting in a small greenhouse for my wife likes flowers, so that's something I want her to be able to grow some starts.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, when I say I feel like we're so close, I can literally, I'm so close to that finish line. This last couple of years, we got a pole barn. It's a garage, but it's a pole barn garage put up. And then with that property purchase next door, honestly, we might have done things a little different, but we never knew that was coming because it has a 30 by 60 pole barn on it, and basically a tiny house on it that they were going to use for a hunting shack, but never really finished it. So I'm finishing that. And the biggest thing,
I hate to break it to you, you don't reach the finish line until you're laying in the pine box, man.
Oh yeah, very
true. If you're homesteading,
yeah,
man, you never get done.
I think when I say we're almost there, we're really almost ready to get started. I mean, infrastructure wise, I hope to have it all ready and then basically be able to really turn.
I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of jealous, man. It sounds like you're doing everything right. Seriously. It really does. I
appreciate it. I mean,
it really does. We'll get back there. This year we're going to get closer to that goal than we were last year, and the year after that we're going to be even closer. So, but yeah, and so that was the homestead. Now, what about building this network? Where do you see this thing going?
It's really hard. I hope to keep it growing. I think the way I'm looking at it is just to get involved in what I see out there and then to build off that. I hope to get involved in anything I can help with. And in turn, I think that'll build what I'm working on. think the best way to attract people is to put some effort into helping. It's always.
Have you reached the point yet where these other groups that you don't know about are reaching out to you not yet?
I made it a point right when I started to kind of reach out to some of them. I feel like we get very divided into, are you a prepper? Are you a homesteader? Are you, there's all these little groups. And then like,
Mhm.
how deep are you into whatever you believe? I don't know. I think there's room for something. And I think Jason's done a good job of it. I mean, everybody kind of has a specialty, but you just bring them together and learn from each other.
I agree. I wish that people would look at what he's done there, and it's not just him; it's the entire group.
Right.
But I really wish they would look at what they've done in Kentucky and start building networks like that in every single state.
Yeah.
I really do. Or our preparedness festival, do it like that. There's just so many different ways to do it. I just wish people would come together and start working together instead of being in their own little insulated circle.
Yeah. And I mean, they talk about, kind of, you mentioned earlier, not show your stuff off because, you don't want this. I mean, if you're going out alone, if something really goes wrong, I mean, you're going to be in trouble anyway. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really prepping for zombies. I'm prepping for life. I think people get hung up into, I mean, if you don't think SHTF can happen after the last 2.5 years, like, I mean, it happens every week. Every week that happens. So I have
somebody told me what we call prepping, our grandparents called a day that ended in Y.
Yeah, I mentioned that I think it was when I talked to Porterhouse. I said, I didn't even really know it was prepping until I got on social media, because what prepping to me was the doomsday thing, like the doomsday show. That's what I thought prepping was, so yeah, I mean, when we were little, we would go to my grandpa's and it was like, he would let us go pick something out from his store, because he basically just had a supply. And I mean,
Nice.
Just a current prepper pantry, basically.
Nice. Okay, man. Listen, we are over an hour and 15 minutes, getting kind of where I like calling it quits. If you've got a chance to say anything you want to people out there in the audience watching this video and chat, what advice would you give them going forward with what you see as what's important right now?
I think the biggest thing is what kind of everybody's pushed me to do. Get out of your comfort zone, get out there and meet people, meet your neighbors. If there's a group, get involved. If you're not uncomfortable, I think even Tag told me, if you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing. So, get out there, be uncomfortable, meet people. You're going to find out there's a lot of people that think just like you. Everybody wants us to think we're the minority, but honestly, if we get out there, we'll probably find out there's a lot more like-minded people than we think.
Yep. There's either Virginia Roots or Lucky Dame in the chat this afternoon pointed that out. There's the silent majority is real, and they think pretty much like-minded. They just don't say anything because they're busy doing stuff instead of talking stuff.
Yeah.
So, well, listen, man, this was a great interview. I really enjoyed meeting you. I cannot wait to meet you guys in person, you and Jason and your son in person at Self-Reliance Festival.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, and definitely looking forward to meeting in person.
Folks, go out and Jake's got a starting YouTube channel, not very big. We need to get on there, and we need to encourage him and give him as much grief as possible so he gets more videos out and he remembers to film stuff like laying in a creek cursing.
Yeah.
So get out there and support him. That's part of what this whole process is about, is supporting each other. And if you know anybody like Jake that you think needs to get some exposure, drop me a line. Our email's in the about page on our page. It's therealgrumpyacres@gmail.com. Make a comment down below about them and see if we can't get in touch with them. We need to start promoting people like Jake and all these other people that are out there doing stuff. They're out there building communities. They're out there building homesteads, and even if somebody's not building a homestead, if they're in a suburban lot, if they're doing something self-sufficiency related that's really worth telling people about, let us know. We want to get these people on interviews like this and get them some exposure, man. This is such a great message that people like Jake got going on. All right. Comment down below. Let us know what you think. If you're watching this on the replay, or if you in chat and you want to make another point, go ahead and do that. We'd love hearing from you. Somebody mentioned giving us a thumbs up. We'd really appreciate that. Let YouTube know that you guys like this content. Figured out the other day, if you're not getting notifications, and this isn't just our channel, it's anybody's channel, unsubscribe and resubscribe and hit that notification bell again. And it usually fixes that problem for a while. Okay. And like I say, every time we end a video, man, just go out, be better tomorrow than you were today, and go live a lifetime free, folks. All right. We are clear. Well, not yet.